1321, which is Duke Energy Progress LLC's fuel and fuel-related cost adjustments for electric utilities. So let's come to order and go on the record. I am Commissioner Karen M. Kimmerite of the North Carolina Utilities Commission and presiding commissioner for this proceeding. With me this morning are Chair Mitchell, Commissioners Brown Bland, Clodfelter, Duffley, McKissick, and Hughes. I now call for hearing docket number E2 sub 1321 in the matter of application of Duke Energy Progress LLC pursuant to North Carolina General Statute section 62-133.2 and Commission Rule R8-55 relating to fuel and fuel-related charge adjustments for electric utilities. Before we proceed further, and as required by the State Government Ethics Act, I remind members of the Commission of our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire at this time as to whether any commissioner has any known conflict of interest with respect to this docket. Let the record reflect that no such conflicts were identified. North Carolina General Statute section 162-133.2 provides for annual fuel charge adjustment proceedings for electric utilities engaged in the generation or production of electricity by fossil or nuclear fuels. Commission Rule R8-55 provides that the fuel charge adjustment proceeding for Duke Energy Progress LLC will be held the third Tuesday of September of each year, and that Duke Energy Progress LLC shall file its direct testimony and exhibits and shall publish notice prior to the hearing. On June the 13th of 2023, Duke Energy Progress filed its application to adjust the fuel and fuel-related cost component of its electric rates, along with the direct testimony of witnesses Harrington, Cameron, Flanagan, Simrell, Wallace, Swez, and Johnson. The following parties have petitioned to and have been allowed to intervene in this proceeding: Carolina Utility Customers Association, Inc., which is KUCA, and Carolina Industrial Group for Fair Utility Rates 2, which is SIGFR 2. On June the 30th of 2023, the Commission issued an order scheduling hearing, requiring filing of testimony, establishing discovery deadlines, and requiring public notice. The order scheduled Duke Energy Progress's fuel charge adjustment hearing for today, Tuesday, September 19, 2023 at 9:00 a.m. On August 28, 2023, Duke Energy Progress filed the supplemental testimony and exhibits of witness Harrington. On September 1st, 2023, the public staff filed the joint direct testimony of witness Brown and the joint direct testimony of witnesses Lawrence and Metz. Also on September 1, 2023, SIGFR 2 filed the direct testimony of witness Collins. On September 8, 2023, Duke Energy Progress filed the rebuttal testimony of witness Harrington. On September 18, 2023, Duke Energy Progress filed the required affidavit of publication of notice. Also on September 18, 2023, the Commission issued an order excusing witnesses, accepting testimony, canceling expert witness hearing, and requiring proposed orders. I now call for appearances of counsel, beginning with Duke Energy Progress.
Good morning, Commissioner Kimmerite, Chair Mitchell, Commissioners LaDon Toon, Associate General Counsel, on behalf of Duke Energy Progress, LLC.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Will Freeman with the public staff, and I'm joined by Zeke Creech, also of the public staff, here on behalf of the using and consuming public.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is DC Conant with Bailey and Dixon representing SIGFR 2.
Good morning. This is Amanda Hawkins with Brooks Pierce representing CUCA.
Okay. Good morning. The sole purpose for this hearing is to inquire whether there is any member of the public who wishes to present public witness testimony. I'll now call on the public staff to advise whether any members of the public are in attendance for the purpose of presenting public witness testimony this morning.
The public staff is unaware of any witnesses here to publicly testify.
Okay. And to be certain of this, I will ask whether there are any public witnesses who wish to be heard regarding the matter to be heard today. And seeing that there are no public witnesses here today, this meeting is adjourned.
Get the high sign, Kim, when you're ready. Okay. Madam Court Reporter, will you please open the record and docket number E2 sub 1320, which is the application of Duke Energy Progress LLC for approval of renewable energy and energy efficiency portfolio standard cost recovery rider pursuant to NCGS 62133.8 and Commission Rule R8-67. In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, I remind members of the Commission of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire at this time whether any member of the Commission has a known conflict of interest. Madam Court Reporter, let the record reflect that no conflicts were identified. Joining me this morning are Commission Chair Mitchell, Commissioners Brown Bland, Commissioner Duffley, Commissioner Hughes, Commissioner McKissick, and Commissioner Kimmerate. I think you're going to have the same panel for all these riders, but let's be clear on the record for all of them. At this point, the sole purpose of this morning's hearing is to receive public witness testimony on Duke Energy Progress's 2023 application for cost recovery rider for the REPS standard. And I'll, at this point, call on counsel for the parties to announce their appearances.
Good morning, Commissioner. Robert Kaler on behalf of Duke Energy Progress.
Good morning, Mr. Kaler.
Morning, William Creech and William Freeman with the public staff on behalf of the using and consuming public.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. DC Conant on behalf of SIG4 2.
Good morning.
Morning, Amanda Hawkins on behalf of CUCA.
Thank you. Good morning. Any preliminary matters? If not, Mr. Kaler?
None from Duke.
Okay. If not, there is one procedural matter we do need to make clear. The order, Commission's order canceling the expert witness hearing, excusing witnesses, accepting pre-filed testimony and exhibits, and requiring proposed orders was entered last week. And in that order, we kept open the record of this proceeding pending today's hearing. Since that order was entered, the company has filed the affidavit of notice of publication of this public hearing, and that was filed on September 18th. So for good order's sake, and without objection from any party, we will receive into the record at this point the affidavit of notice of publication of today's hearing that was filed on September 18th, 2023. And I think that'll give us a complete record.
Thank you.
Any objection? All right, that's fine. At this point then, if there are no other preliminary matters, I'll call upon the public staff to advise whether they have identified any public witnesses who wish to provide testimony on this rider docket.
Mr. Clodfelter, we're not aware of any public witnesses for this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Creech. At this point then, I'll ask if there's anyone in the hearing room this morning who wishes to present testimony to the Commission on Duke Energy Progress's 2023 application for cost recovery rider with respect to the REPS standard. Madam Court Reporter, please enter into the record a note that there are no parties asking to provide testimony this morning. Counsel, any other matters?
Nothing from Duke Progress.
No, sir.
Okay, we have established due dates for proposed orders and briefs, if any, in the order entered last week. So that's already taken care of. And with that, if there's nothing further, we will conclude the hearing on this docket. Thank you.
Good morning. Let's come to order and please go on the record. I am Commissioner Kimberly W. Duffley, and with me are Chair Charlotte A. Mitchell and Commissioners Tanola D. Brown Bland, Daniel G. Clodfelter, Jeffrey A. Hughes, Floyd B. McKissick Jr., and Karen M. Kimmerite. I now call for hearing docket number E2 sub 1323, which is the application of Duke Energy Progress LLC, hereinafter DEP, for approval of the CPRE cost recovery rider and the 2022 CPRE compliance report pursuant to North Carolina General Statute Section 62-110.8 and Commission Rule R8-71. In compliance with the State Ethics Act, I remind members of the Commission of our responsibility to avoid conflicts of interest, and I inquire whether any member has a known conflict of interest with respect to the matter coming before us. Let the record reflect no conflicts were identified. On June 13th, 2023, DEP filed its application for approval of the CPRE Cost Recovery Rider and the 2022 CPRE Compliance Report, along with the testimony and exhibits of witness Angela Tabor and witness Christy Walker, both containing confidential information. On June 30th, 2023, the Commission issued an order scheduling a hearing requiring filing of testimony, establishing discovery guidelines, and requiring public notice. Timely petitions to intervene in this docket were filed by Carolina Utility Customers Association, or CUCA, and the Carolina Industrial Group for Fair Utility Rates 2, hereinafter SIGFR 2. The Commission granted these petitions to intervene. The intervention and participation by the public staff is recognized pursuant to North Carolina General Statute Section 62-15. On August 29, 2023, the public staff filed the notice of affidavits and the affidavits of witness Cofield and witness Thomas. On September 7, 2023, DEP filed a letter in lieu of rebuttal testimony. On September 11, 2023, DEP and the public staff filed a joint motion requesting the Commission excuse all expert witnesses from testifying at today's hearing and accept the expert witnesses' pre-filed testimony, exhibits, and affidavits into the record. On September 13, 2023, the Commission issued an order excusing witnesses, accepting testimony, canceling expert witness hearing, and requiring proposed orders. On September 18, 2023, DEP filed the required affidavit of publication of notice. I now call for appearances of counsel, beginning with DEP.
Good morning, Commissioner Duffley, LaDon Toon, Associate General Counsel on behalf of Duke Energy Progress, LLC.
Morning, Commissioner Duffley, William Creech, joined by William Freeman with the public staff on behalf of the using and consuming public. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, DC Conant on behalf of SIGFR 2.
Good morning.
Morning, Amanda Hawkins on behalf of CECA.
Good morning. The sole purpose for this hearing is to inquire whether is there any member of the public who is here to present public witness testimony. I now call on the public staff to advise whether any members of the public are in attendance for the purpose of presenting public witness testimony.
Presiding Commissioner Duffley, we're not aware of any witnesses who wish to speak today.
And just to be sure, is there any member in the audience that wishes to present public witness testimony? Okay, hearing none, this hearing is adjourned.
Madam Court Reporter, you ready? Good morning. Let's come to order and proceed with docket number E2 sub 1324. I'm Commissioner Floyd B. McKissick Jr. with the North Carolina Utilities Commission, and I am the presiding commissioner for this hearing. With me this morning are Chair Charlotte A. Mitchell, Commissioners Tanola D. Brown Bland, Daniel G. Clotfelter, Kimberly A. Duffley, Jeffrey A. Hughes, and Karen N. Camerite. I now call for hearing docket E2 sub 1324 in the matter of application of Duke Energy Progress LLC for approval of joint agency asset cost recovery rider pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 62-133 subsection 14 and Commission Rule R-870. On June 13th, DEP filed its annual application for approval of joint agency asset cost recovery, including pre-filed testimony of Brian L. Sykes. On August 28, 23, the public staff filed the affidavit of Meredith Strickland. The only other parties to this docket are Carolina Industrial Group for Fair Utility Rates 2 and Carolina Utility Customers Association Incorporated. On September 11, 2023, DEP and the public staff filed a joint motion requesting that their witnesses be excused from attending today's hearing and that the witnesses' pre-filed testimony be entered into evidence. On September 13, 2023, the Commission issued an order granting the joint motion and canceling the expert witness hearing. In compliance with the requirements of Chapter 138A of the State Government Ethics Act, I remind the members of the commission of our responsibility to avoid conflict of interest, and I inquire whether any member has a conflict of interest with respect to the matter before us this morning. Let the record reflect that I have no such conflict and that my fellow commissioners have not identified any such conflict. I now call for appearances of counsel, beginning with DEP.
Good morning, Commissioner McKissick, members of the commission, Robert Kaler on behalf of Duke Energy Progress.
Morning, Commissioners. This is Ann Keyworth on behalf of the public staff with Nadia Lorne.
Good morning, this is DC Conant on behalf of SIG for 2.
Good morning, Amanda Hawkins on behalf of CUCA.
Let me first ask if there are any preliminary matters that need to be addressed prior to beginning of the hearing.
Commissioner, I believe we need to have the affidavits that we filed yesterday entered into the record in this docket.
All right. We do have affidavits which need to be admitted into the public record. Those being the affidavits. Identify those parties, Mr. Kaler.
This was the affidavits of publication, of public.
Oh, publication.
Yes.
So it's now duly noted the application of publication is duly incorporated into the record unless there are objections. Seeing no objections, let that become a part of the official record of this particular proceeding. I'll now look to public staff to see if there are any witnesses which you can have identified that would like to testify today.
Thank you, Commissioner. None that we're aware of.
Okay. And I will now look to the audience to see if there's anybody here to speak in connection with the matter before us this morning. Let the record reflect that there's no one here in the hearing room which identified themselves as seeking to testify as public witnesses this morning. That being the case, there are no further matters between us, and this hearing is hereby adjourned.
Okay.
Good morning. Let us come to order and go on the record. I am Commissioner Tanola D. Brown Bland with the North Carolina Utilities Commission, presiding commissioner for this hearing. With me this morning are Commissioners Chair Charlotte A. Mitchell, Daniel G. Clodfelter, Kimberly W. Duffley, Jeffrey A. Hughes, Floyd B. McKissick Jr., and Karen M. Kimmerite. I now call for hearing docket number E2 sub 1322 in the matter of application of Duke Energy Progress LLC's annual review for approval of demand-side management and energy efficiency cost recovery rider. North Carolina General Statute 62-133.9 establishes the procedure for cost recovery of demand-side management, hereinafter DSM, and energy efficiency, hereinafter EE expenditures. The statute provides for an annual DSM EE rider for electric public utilities to recover all reasonable and prudent costs incurred and appropriate incentives for adoption and implementation of new DSM and EE measures. On June 13th, 2023, Duke Energy Progress LLC, hereafter DEP or applicant or company, filed its application for approval of DSM and EE cost recovery rider pursuant to the General Statute 62-133.9 and Commission Rule R8-69, along with the direct testimony and exhibits of KCQ Fields and Carolyn T. Miller in support of the application. On June 30th, 2023, the Commission issued an order scheduling hearing, requiring filing of testimony, establishing discovery guidelines, and requiring public notice. The order scheduled the hearing in this docket for today, Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, immediately following the hearings in the company's annual fuel and reps charge adjustment proceedings, which were scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. Based on their timely petitions to intervene in this docket, the following parties were allowed to intervene by order of the Commission: Carolina Utility Customers Association, referred to as CUCA, and Carolina Industrial Group for Fair Utility Rates 2, referred to as CPRE 2. The intervention and participation of the public staff is recognized pursuant to General Statute 62-15D and Commission Rule R1-19E. On August 24th, 2023, DEP filed a supplemental testimony of witness Fields and witness Miller. This testimony of witnesses Field and Miller was refiled on August 28th, 2023, in order to identify correctly the attorney making the filing on behalf of DEP. On August 29th, 2023, the public staff filed the testimony and exhibits of Tommy Williamson Jr., Warren Hirons, and Hamath Mehta. On September 7th, 2023, DEP filed the rebuttal testimony and exhibits of witness Fields, witness Miller, and Lark L. Lee. On September 15th, 2023, the public staff filed a motion stating that witness Mehta would not be available to testify at today's hearing and requesting that Michelle Boswell, Director of the Public Staff's Accounting Division, be allowed to adopt witness Mehta's testimony and testify at the hearing. On September 18th, 2023, the Commission issued an order granting the public staff's motion. Also on September 18th, 2023, DEP filed the affidavit of public notice in this matter. In compliance with the requirements of the State Government Ethics Act, I remind all members of the Commission of our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire at this time whether any member has any known conflict of interest with respect to the matter before us. The record will reflect no conflicts were identified. I now call for appearances of counsel, beginning with the applicant.
Good morning, Commissioner Brown-Bland, LaDon Toon, Associate General Counsel. On behalf of Duke Energy Progress, I have with me Mr. Middleton, who will introduce himself.
Hi, Will Middleton with the law firm Baker Donaldson on behalf of the company. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Ann Keyworth on behalf of the public staff, and with me today is Nadia Lohr.
Good morning.
Good morning, DC Conant on behalf of CPRE 2.
Good morning, Amanda Hawkins on behalf of CUCA.
Good morning to all. Before I make inquiry regarding the public witness hearing, are there any preliminary matters to be addressed?
I have a brief one, Commissioner Brown-Bland, just that although the public staff filed the motion to substitute witness Boswell for witness Mehta, we did not file the testimony in that form until yesterday. And so that was filed in the docket yesterday. Michelle Boswell's testimony, including the appendix with her qualifications.
So it was filed with her adopting Mr. Mehta's testimony. Is that what you?
That's correct. The motion was filed on Friday, and the testimony in its current form under witness Boswell was filed yesterday.
All right. Thank you for that. And the record will so reflect. All right. Has the public staff identified any public witnesses?
We have not, Commissioner Brown-Bland.
All right. Just for the record, is there anyone who's a member of the public or a customer who wishes to give testimony this morning? The record will reflect that no one came forward. All right, so the case is with the applicant.
Good morning. Commissioner Brownland, one preliminary matter, with your permission, we would like to call witnesses, Mr. Fields, Ms. Miller, and Ms. Lee as a rebuttal, as a panel to address our rebuttal and direct case.
All right, so rebuttal and direct at one time
Please.
and one panel. That will be appropriate.
Thank you. I now call Carolyn T. Miller, Casey Q. Fields, and Lark L. Lee. I apologize, Ms. Lee. Please be careful when you're getting on the stand.
All right, if the three of you can reach the Bible with your left hand and raise your right. Do you sincerely and solemnly swear that the testimony you will give or about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. Starting with Ms. Miller, would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Carolyn Miller, and my business address is 525 South Tryon Street, Charlotte, North Carolina.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm the manager of rates and regulatory strategy for Duke Energy Carolinas, LLC, supporting both Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolinas.
And did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket on June 13th, 2023, 18 pages of direct testimony and 6 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony?
I do not.
And did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket on August 24th, 2023, 5 pages of supplemental testimony and 3 exhibits?
Yes, I did. The supplemental testimony was refiled on August 28th, 2023, but was identical to the original supplemental testimony.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your supplemental testimony, including exhibits?
No, I do not.
Did you also cause to be pre-filed in this docket on September 7th, 2023, 3 pages of rebuttal testimony and 3 exhibits?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your rebuttal testimony?
No.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your direct, supplemental, and rebuttal testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
And have you prepared a summary of your testimony for the commission?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown-Bland, I move that Ms. Miller's pre-filed direct, supplemental, and rebuttal testimony, as well as the summary of her testimonies, be copied into the record as if orally given from the stand.
All right, without objection, that motion will be allowed, and the pre-filed testimonies previously identified, as well as the summary, will be received and copied into the record as if given orally, word for word from the witness stand.
Thank you.
And the exhibits,
I'd also move that Ms. Miller's exhibits be marked for identification as pre-filed.
that motion is allowed.
Thank you. Turning to you, Mr. Fields, would you please state your name and business address for the record?
Yes, my name is Casey Q. Fields, and my business address is 411 Fayetteville Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27601.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy Business Services as a strategy and collaboration manager for the Carolinas and the Customer Solutions Regulatory Enablement Group.
Did you cause to be pre-filed in this docket on June 13th, 29 pages of direct testimony and 23 exhibits?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony? And did you also cause to be pre-filed in this docket on August 24th, 2023, 3 pages of supplemental testimony and 5 exhibits?
Yes, I did. This supplemental testimony was refiled on August 28th, 2023, and it was identical to the original supplemental testimony.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your supplemental testimony, including exhibits?
I do not.
Did you also cause to be pre-filed in this docket on September 7th, 2023, 5 pages of rebuttal testimony and 4 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your rebuttal testimony or exhibits?
I do not.
If I would ask you the same questions today that appear in your direct, supplemental, and rebuttal testimony, would your answers remain the same?
Yes.
And have you prepared a summary of your direct, supplemental, and rebuttal testimony for the commission?
Yes, I have.
Commissioner Brown-Bland, at this time, I request that Mr. Fields' pre-filed direct, supplemental, and rebuttal testimony, as well as his summary of his testimonies, be copied into the record as if orally given from the stand, as well as move Mr. Fields' exhibits be pre-marked for identification as pre-filed.
Without any objection, that motion is allowed.
Yeah. And finally, Ms. Lee, and apologies for calling you over.
I'm used to it.
Would you please state your name and add a business address for the record?
Yes, Lark L. Lee, 2600 Laurel Cliff, New Braunfels, Texas.
And by whom are you employed and what capacity?
I'm employed by Tetra Tech as a senior director.
Ms. Lee, did you cause to be pre-filed on this docket on September 7th, 2023, 13 pages of rebuttal testimony?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections?
I do not.
And if I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your rebuttal testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes,
Did you also prepare a summary of your rebuttal testimony?
I did.
Commissioner Brown Bland, at this time, I move that Ms. Lee's summary as well as her pre-filed rebuttal testimony be copied into the record as if orally given from the stand.
That motion is allowed without any objection.
And I'd also move that the company's application, which was filed on June 13th, 2023, be copied into the record.
That motion likewise is allowed.
And Commissioner Brown Bland, with your permission, I'd like to ask Ms. Lee a few questions before tendering the panel for cross-examination.
All right, you may do so.
Ms. Lee, have you had an opportunity to review Mr. Hiron's rebuttal testimony?
I have.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the testimony before you?
I do.
Would you please turn to page 34 of Mr. Hiron's testimony? All right. And do you see where Mr. Hiron says making recommendations to the company with respect to this current proceeding and future evaluations?
I do.
As the company's evaluator, would you please explain to the commission why you've recommended that the company not remove NPSO savings from the current evaluation in this proceeding?
Absolutely. So it's very important to measure non-participant spillover. That results in direct system benefits for North Carolina's customers, and the evaluator reliably did this as demonstrated in my rebuttal. So we do not agree with this recommendation.
And would you, with regards to the recommendations Mr. Hirons is making for future evaluations, would you please identify for the commission those recommendations which you agree with?
Yes, absolutely. So continuous improvement is very important in evaluation, just like it is in the program. So we agree with 3 of these very much as best practices. Recommendation 1, which is about report transparency, that's very important. We also agree with recommendation 2, which will agree on a methodology to proportion non-participant spillover across territories. So having that clear will help clear up misunderstandings in the future, which is what happened here. And we also agree completely with number 4, which is about reasonable checks on results.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. And will you also address the remaining recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would object to that at this time, just because I think it would be more appropriate for witness Hirons to go through his recommendations.
Yes. And Commissioner Brown, Ms. Lee, who is representing the company's evaluator, is responding to how she's advised the company to implement those recommendations going forward.
And I think that that's better handled on redirect than on direct.
Yes, that motion will be sustained.
Okay. Ms. Lee, do you have any further comments with respect to recommendations at this time?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you, Commissioner Brown Bland. That panel is now available for cross-examination.
All right. Their cross-examination for this panel.
The public staff has a few questions. Mr. Fields, I'll start with you. In your rebuttal testimony on page 5, you indicated that the EMMV process used for this custom program is consistent with the method that the company has used historically. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding your use of the term historically in that context properly. So when you say consistent with the method that the company has used historically, are you referring to when the savings of a report take effect in the rider? Was that your intent with that term?
Yeah, so when we look at the net to gross, and really I'm trying to draw back to the mechanism. I think earlier in my rebuttal testimony, we talk about a reference to attachment A of the mechanism, which is referred to DEC's portion of the mechanism, but it is specific to the custom program, and it spells that out. Attachment A is the DE portion of that, and it does not have custom specifically spelled out, but it talks about when to apply the net to gross specifically. And so just to kind of, that does specifically say not to address it retroactively or retrospectively. So that is what I'm trying to get at in my testimony.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So am I correct then in thinking that you're not saying that that previous reports have similarly included MPSO in the analysis for this custom program?
Can you repeat the question? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So am I correct in thinking that what you're not saying in that sentence is that previous custom reports have similarly included MPSO in the analysis?
I'm trying to think back to the previous report, and I'm unsure of that at this time. If that included MPSO, I do not recall off the top of my head.
Okay, subject to check, would you agree that would you take that it does not?
Subject to check.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Page 6 of your rebuttal testimony.
May I get there, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. I am as well. You stated that the combined in your footnote 1, you stated that the combined results are weighted using the same kilowatt hour based weights used for DEC and DEP results, since this accounts for individual project sizes as well as the relative size of the programs across the 2 jurisdictions. But in this instance, isn't it true that this is only the case for free ridership and participant spillover in this instance and not for MPSO?
That's correct, because for custom, we only have confidence in the project savings numbers for projects that were done by participants. That's not the case for non-participants.
On page 7, you indicated that the evaluator weighted savings by contractor size. Was this method noted in the associated evaluation plan or in the report of utilizing specifically savings by contractor size?
I would have to check that if contractor size is noted in the report. Again, we agreed with the recommendation on increased transparency to help external review. So that is probably a process improvement that needs to be made. I would actually have to go double check the report. I did check the plan, and that really was about participant spillover and free ridership. So I do agree with that for sure on the plan.
Okay, thank you. And did the evaluator have the information necessary to weight the MPSO savings calculations by measure strata?
So when you weight, you always have to think about weighting of, does it make sense to do it or not? And we did a census sample of contractors. We had 4 different strata. We checked the percent of survey completes in the strata. It was representative of the contractor population, so no weighting was necessary.
But you did have the information necessary to do
As
it.
far as contractor by strata, yes, but not as far as project size.
Okay, so if I'm following correctly, then you could have done the analysis in the manner that the plan indicated it would be conducted.
Not for non-participant spillover. So you ask contractors about thinking about the projects you did through the program. Did you do projects like that outside of the program where they didn't receive the incentive? And then you really want to understand, did activities through the program like training or education lead to them doing those more energy efficient projects? So you don't actually say, okay, give me the KW and KWH for each of those projects. So you don't actually have that information for non-participant spillover.
Okay. Page 11, lines, let me get there myself. lines 17 through 19, in stating that customer eligibility is not a criteria to estimate NPSO. You discussed the Pennsylvania framework criteria for estimating NPSO as being that the project was influenced by the program and that the project reduces energy consumption and or demand. But are customers in Pennsylvania even allowed to opt out of DSME programs?
So it's been a while since I've worked in Pennsylvania. That's really not relevant because by using the framework, what we're doing is applying the survey questions and analysis to measure non-participant spillover. So I'm not sure how that policy context in Pennsylvania applies.
Okay, that's it from the public staff.
Any further cross-examination from CPRE, CUCA? All right, redirect.
There's a few questions. Ms. Lee, you've received a few questions from public staff regarding NPSO. For a level set, can you explain how NPSO occurs?
How it occurs? Well, it's just so I work all over. Duke does a lot with contractors. So they have dedicated trade ally outreach. They have energy efficiency engineers that provide technical assistance, which is really important for custom projects. And then they also have implementation contractors for this particular program. It's Willdan that also works with contractors. So it really changes the way they view energy efficiency, how they work in the field, how they sell it to customers. So even without an incentive, it's influenced the way contractors work in the market and with other customers. So that's what non-participant spillover does, is it's looking how has the program affected contractors and looks to count that percent into savings.
Thank you. And when you talk about counting the percent in statements, can you talk what steps you took to capture those savings, the sort of methodology, the steps you took to do that?
Overall, the overall percent of net to gross or non-participant?
For NPSO.
Yeah, for NPSO. So we took a really robust sampling approach. We took a census sample. It would be ideal if we could actually get every single contractor on the phone, but we worked really hard to get a high response rate for that population. We're 37%. So we talked at 67 contractors that are out there working with North Carolina customers to ask them about their influence. We asked those survey questions that are in the Pennsylvania framework, and we analyze them based on how it's laid out in the framework to determine the percent of projects that are like projects done in the program that they did without the incentive.
And you've talked a lot about this Pennsylvania framework. Is that industry standard? Why are you relying on that framework?
Great to have a industry standard, transparent, consistent framework. It is based on the Uniform Methods Project by the Department of Energy. It also references other statewide frameworks as well, such as that in Massachusetts and Oregon.
And turning your attention back to the recommendations that Mr. Hirons has made.
Can I get there?
Yes,
Thank
please.
you.
Do you get page 34?
I'm going to object because I don't believe that this was asked on cross.
Ms. Lee did speak to the recommendations that she appreciated from Mr. Hirons, and that one of those was transparency and sort of net to gross. So she did have the discussions with respect to Mr. Hirons' recommendations.
I'll allow it in an overruled objection.
When you're at page 34, just let me know. Okay. And with respect to the recommendations, one you mentioned was transparency that Mr. Hirons made. Could you address the other recommendations that Mr. Hirons has made with respect to future evaluations that you agree with?
That I agree with. Okay, so again, the first one with report transparency, very much agree with that. The second one was about proportioning non-participant spillover by DEP and DEC territory. Very much agree with that. And then we also agree on those reasonable checks on results, that they are defensible, reliable. We agree with that, and we do that, as my rebuttal testimony demonstrated.
Are there any recommendations that you don't agree with?
Well, there are Two that I agree with some nuanced changes in order to make sure that they're evaluation best practices as an evaluation expert. There is one that I do disagree with for North Carolina.
And with respect to that one, can you explain why you disagree?
Again, I'm going to object based on the fact that I don't think we got into this on cross.
I sustain that objection.
And with respect to the calculation and PSO, was there any error in that calculation?
There was no error in the recommended net to gross ratio, which included non-participant spillover at 12.95%.
And is that with regard to the adjustment that the company made?
There was a miscommunication between the evaluator and the company, and Mr. Fields can address that further.
So in our conversations during rebuttal, there was we try to apply very jurisdictional specific values in our measures and how we apply them, and we applied a DEP value. In the instance, in the conversation talking with Ms. Lee, we understood that the contractor was working in both DEC and DEP, and it found that using a combined 12.95% was more appropriate to remove that one opportunity of crossing over the path. So we've combined it. That's reduced it from I think it was the 25% down to the 12.95%.
As the company believe that the analysis is provided reliable results?
We do. Moving forward, the reliable results are there, the report's there. I think moving forward, our conversations with Ms. Lee and her team will be to make sure that when we apply the appropriate percentages, we're doing it in the correct way as the report is. We took a look at the report and interpreted it a different way. Moving forward, we'll be working with them to make sure we input the correct figures to our programs and measures.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Questions by the commission? Commissioner Duffy?
So I was interested in hearing what recommendation you disagreed with by public staff witness hearings, please.
All right. So he recommends that opt-out customers are removed from non-participant spillover calculations, getting them to do more energy efficiency because of how the program works with contractors just generate system benefits. I think that is really important in fast-growing states like North Carolina. So I really recommend that non-participant spillover includes all system benefits.
And if it's okay, and to follow up with that, we talk a lot about opt-outs and how we deal with customers that opt out of the DSM-EE rider. In this one instance, I think it's a good representation of our trade ally network, our contractors and the program team, educating our contractors about energy efficiency and seeing what the effects are that are going beyond just the participants of the DSM-EE rider. So we are seeing an opportunity here that the trainings that we have do impact other customers within North Carolina.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I have a few, and for clarity purposes, well, let me just say, if I should ask anything that comes close to eliciting any confidential information, I hope you will alert us and we will deal with it appropriately at that time. So my first question has to do with the magnitude of the issue that we're dealing with here in terms of the Exhibit E. Given the adjustments that have been made and brought to our attention through the rebuttal testimony, what is the impact of this issue in terms of just the impact?
Absolutely. So the rebuttal does a reworking of the exhibits there. That changed a net to it of about $6,662. The impact to the rider, Carolyn, how can I let you take that?
In my rebuttal testimony, there is no impact to the rider based on the $6,660 adjustment. If we went and implemented the public staff's adjustments as their witness Hiren recommended, the amount would be about $20,000, and it would increase our non-residential DSM rates by 0.0001 cents per kWh.
All right, thank you. And that additional, that 6,000, is that to the revenue requirement?
Yes.
And then that would be 20,000 if, or in that neighborhood of 20,000 if the public staff's recommendation
That
were
is correct.
implemented. All right, thank you. An impact to prospective rates, if you're able to say?
We did not flow the adjustments through our prospective rates as they are an estimate, and we would just true those up when we true up vintage year 2024.
All right. And was there any separate impact on the experience modification factor? Either one of you prepared to say?
For the rebuttal testimony that I filed, there would be no adjustment. For the public staff's position, it would be an increase to the non-residential DSM EMF rate of 0.0001.
All right. Commissioner Cameron.
I have a question. This is a separate question. It relates to your direct testimony about industrial and large commercial customers that have been opting out of the DSM and EE programs. And I think you stated on page 20 that a little over 4,700 eligible non-residential customers have opted out of EE programs, and a little less than 4,700 customers have opted out of the DSM programs. Can you tell the commission what you're hearing? Again, this has been, I think, an ongoing concern about why why DEP has not had better participation by industrial and large commercial customers.
Absolutely. Yeah, so customers that opt out of the rider are doing it for a lot of economic reasons. They are pretty savvy customers that look at the benefits of opting into the rider and paying that rate versus the incentives that we'll be paying for these measures. And so they're doing analysis on that perspective. Our account managers, our account executives that work with them, they do get updated information from the DSM-EE rider and the program teams of the custom and prescriptive incentives that we do offer. So they are informed of that and educating them as we move through, current and future years. There is still this economic factor that plays into it at the end of the day. I would say that the reason you're probably not seeing a lot more opted-in customers at this point is, we've got a lot of customers tightening their belt, trying to figure out if this is a step that they want to take today, or if maybe it's payroll. And so they are trying to prioritize those opportunities. I would say that if there's any future way that we can work on increasing incentives, that would be a great opportunity. Those are maybe looking at enablers that we can flow through and pass into those incentives. That will help them make the decision to probably opt in at that point.
And that leads to my second question. I wanted to make sure I was interpreting your testimony correctly, because I think you talked about things that DEP was considering to get better participation by those customers. And you mentioned larger incentives, but my reading of your testimony is that the feedback you were getting is that even with larger incentives, you're not anticipating greater participation. Did I read your testimony correctly?
Yeah, and that's a tough one, because we're having conversations with the large account managers and with the customers there that were saying, well, the feedback is we need larger incentives. And so we go back and we pencil in, can we make this work on a cost benefit analysis? Are avoided costs changing? Can we increase these incentives to make this work? And you kind of bring that back to the table and you go, okay, this is what we can make pencil and work based on avoided. And that's not always successful, but the team is constantly working at trying to increase those incentives so that we can go back to the table and work with those customers. There is also, at this time, these are very close measures that are meeting cost effectiveness. And so you don't want to over incentivize because then you're not getting the KW value on the back end to justify it. And then that would tank our cost effectiveness. So the company's approach is to be conservative, but also to entice customers to participate. It's a fine balance there. Over incentive could possibly kill the program and we have to close it down. So we want to make sure we're doing the right thing with how the avoided costs are coming through and how we talk to the customers about that. It's a balancing effort. So that's one of the enablers. I think increasing incentives can definitely do that, but I just can't arbitrarily increase them without maybe negatively affecting the UCT.
Thank you.
So Witness Lee, couple questions for you, and you can just expound more upon what you've told us already, but give us some more detail. So what are the survey tools that the company uses to obtain this information about the non-participant spillover, and how valuable are the tools that you know about?
So we actually have an in-house survey research center. That's something that we do. We literally do thousands of energy efficiency surveys a year for utilities throughout the country. So the method of survey we use does vary by customers. For commercial customers, and contractors, we do like to use telephone. Whereas residential, you actually kind of want to do a mix mode to get them. So it was a telephone survey. We use computer-assisted software where everything's captured, the data, so we have highest, because it really matters that you have really good data too. So everything's recorded, it's all captured. We have extensive interviewer training. We actually have interviewers that have been with us for over a decade, so are very experienced on collecting data for energy efficiency programs. So that really is a foundation. If you don't have good data, but we have excellent data and survey techniques to capture those responses.
And is telephone the sole method, or are there other methods, personal interview?
Yeah, so for this one, so we do often do personal interviews too. That is more qualitative information when we really want to dive deeply on a subject, understand the story behind numbers. But when you're actually trying to calculate an estimate, you want quantitative data. So, again, we got hold of 67, we took a census sample. So, calling, through about 3 times that much, we did achieve better than a 33% response rate. But so in that case, we did just do the telephone surveys with that software to capture very quantitative data. So, we can produce descriptives, we can produce estimates.
And do you have a track record or some type of method whereby over time you've determined that you're getting reliable information?
Yeah, so there is just the industry standard for an estimate, and especially in survey research, is calculating a confidence interval and a precision estimate. So that is very generally accepted everywhere, that's 90% confidence plus or minus 10%. So that's kind of the, brackets either way around the interval. So we reported that, and we did exceed that industry standard in our NPSO estimate.
All right, and can you tell us what kinds of questions that the contractors are asked to determine whether the contractor's customer was significantly influenced by his or her knowledge of the program?
Absolutely. So we used 3 questions, and again, based on the Pennsylvania framework. So I get them in the right order. May I turn to my testimony to get them exactly right in the right order?
Yes, you may.
Of course, it would be somewhere in the middle. So give me. All right, so it's on page 9 of my testimony. starting with line 7, I briefly summarize here the 3 questions that were used based on the Pennsylvania framework. There is attachment in Mr. Hiron's testimony where we kind of walk through the analysis in detail, but that's rather detailed. So, first we talk about the number of projects sold within the company's service territory that were similar to the projects that were done through the company's program. And then we talk about the percent of those sales that received an incentive and the percent that did not, and then how influential the programs were on those projects that did not receive an incentive.
All right. And through these questions, you would be able to determine whether they would significantly influence the customers or not, because they.
Correct. We trust the contractors that they, kind of understand what they've learned from the program and then how they go and use that with other customers. And if, those skills, whether it's the right kind of measure or how they, kind of sell energy efficiency, that they know that skills they learned from the program resulted in that additional savings. And, we get a wide variety of responses across contractors. We have contractors that were very influenced by the program and really changed practices. And we have ones that weren't as influenced. And that seems to be pretty standard doing this research across the country.
All right. And I understand from your testimony and your response to Ms. Keyworth a little earlier that you use the Pennsylvania framework and you believe that addresses the questions raised by Mr. Hirons on ineligibility of the participant. But if you could look at page 30 of Hirons' testimony. And just give me your response to the argument raised there about cross-subsidization. That's on line 9. So it's answering the question about the opted out customers.
Yes, absolutely. So it really, to me, is about that they generate system benefits, right? So it benefits everybody, especially in fast-growing states. For grid reliability, congestion, all of that. Those are real reductions to the grid, whether they're from an opt-out customer or a customer who's in the program. Can I turn it over to Mr. Fields for additional discussion on cross-subsidy?
So this is kind of where I took issue with this recommendation of removing the opt-outs. We are talking about a program that is generating energy savings, but not having to apply an incentive to do so. So this is one of probably the more cost-effective ways to do things. It's an opted-out customer, but still receiving system benefits to all the ratepayers. And that feels like a really good story to tell when our teams are going out there training contractors to do this kind of work. We should capture that and analyze it.
All right. Any other questions from commission? All right, questions on commission's questions.
None from the company.
I have one. Y'all were talking about opt-outs. You were asked a few questions about that. Do opted-in customers pay for opt-out savings attributable to opt-outs?
Maybe only in the specific scenario of NPSO to the extent that they're also receiving the benefits as well. And that is creating a statistically significant value of showing the values of savings versus what the potential cost of that training would do so.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right. And still.
No question. Thank you.
All right. Any motion?
No motions at this time.
On the exhibits?
Oh, yes, but we'd like to, thank you. At this time, the couple that asked that Mr. Fields' direct supplemental and rebuttal exhibits, as well as Ms. Miller's direct rebuttal and supplemental exhibits, we move into evidence.
All right. Hearing no objection, that motion is allowed and the exhibits are received into evidence.
Thank you.
All right. This panel may be excused.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown Bland, if we're ready for it, then the public staff would call witnesses Boswell, Williamson, and Hirons to the stand.
Good. You're not.
All right, the veteran witness knows the drill, so if each could reach the Bible with your left hand. Raise your right. Do you sincerely and solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, Ms. Keewer.
Ms. Boswell, we'll start with you. Would you please state your name, business address, and current position for the record?
Michelle Boswell. I'm the Director of Accounting for the Public Staff. My business address is 430 North Salisbury Street, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Are you aware that on August 29th, 2023, the public staff witness Hemant Mehta prepared and caused to be pre-filed direct testimony in this docket consisting of 11 pages and 1 appendix?
Yes.
Were that testimony and appendix prepared with your knowledge and under your supervision as Mr. Mehta's supervisor?
It was.
Are you aware of any changes or corrections made by Mr. Mehta to that pre-filed direct testimony?
I am not.
On September 15th, 2023, did you, through counsel, move the commission to be substituted as the sponsor of the testimony pre-filed by Mr. Mehta?
I did.
On September 18th, 2023, did you prepare and cause to be pre-filed direct testimony in this docket consisting of 11 pages and 1 appendix consistent with the public staff's motion for substitution?
I did.
Do you have any corrections to make to your pre-filed direct testimony?
I do not.
And if you were asked the same questions today, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Presiding Commissioner Brown Bland, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony and appendix of public staff witness Boswell be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Hearing no objection, that motion is allowed, and the pre-filed testimony will be treated as given orally from the witness stand.
Mr. Williamson, would you please state your name, business address, and current position for the record?
Yes, I'm Tommy Williamson Jr., work for the public staff at 430 North Salisbury Street, Raleigh, North Carolina.
On August 29th, 2023, did you prepare and cause to be pre-filed direct testimony in this docket consisting of 15 pages, 1 appendix, and 2 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any corrections to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
If you were asked the same questions today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Presiding Commissioner Brown Bland, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony and appendix of public staff witness Williamson be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Williamson exhibits 1 and 2 be marked for identification as pre-marked.
All right, hearing no objection, that motion is allowed, and the 2 exhibits will be identified as they were when pre-filed.
Mr. Hirons, would you please state your name, title, business affiliation, and business address for the record?
My name is Warren Hirons. I'm a project manager with GDS Associates. Our business address is 1850 Parkway Place, Marietta, Georgia.
And were you hired by the public staff to appear as an expert witness in this proceeding?
Yes.
On August 29th, 2023, did you prepare and cause to be pre-filed direct testimony in this docket on behalf of the public staff consisting of 36 pages and 7 exhibits, including 1 confidential exhibit?
I did.
Do you have any corrections to make to your pre-filed direct testimony?
I do not.
Presiding Commissioner Brown Bland, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony of public staff witness Hirons be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Hirons exhibits 1 through 7 be marked for identification as pre-filed.
That motion is allowed without any objection.
Thank you.
And
And
the court reporter takes note that there is the confidential exhibit. We will treat it as such from here out.
And before I open the panel for cross, similar to Ms. Toon for the company, I wanted to ask 2 questions on direct to elicit certain changes to our recommendation based on information learned from the company's rebuttal discovery.
All right,
No objection.
that motion will be allowed.
Thank you. Ms. Boswell, based on the company's rebuttal testimony, has the public staff's recommendation that the MPSO savings be removed changed at all since the public staff filed its direct testimony?
It has. Although we still do not agree with the calculation of net savings provided in the company's rebuttal based on our issues with the methodology applied, we no longer recommend the removal of NPSO savings. We learned that based on the PPI floor created by paragraph 78 and the PRI floor created by paragraph 89 subsection D in DEP's current approved DSMEE mechanism, our recommendation would result in a slight increase in rates. The reduced savings contained in the company's rebuttal ensures the rates would not increase, and the public staff withdraws its recommended adjustment that the company remove NPSO savings entirely.
And Mr. Hirons, which of your recommendations concerning future evaluations of the company's non-residential custom programs MPSO assessment have been resolved by the rebuttal testimony of DEP witness Lee? And I think you were probably listening to witness Lee's testimony, so you can indicate and, consistent with that testimony as well.
The first, second, and fourth recommendations have been resolved. The first, second, and fourth recommendations have been resolved.
All right, and with that, the panel is open for cross-examination.
No cross for these witnesses.
All right, any cross? Questions from the commission? Well, Ms. Keyworth, I had a whole list here, and I think you took care of my list. I will ask you, Mr. Harris, just so that I understand. If you look at, I think it's witness Lee's rebuttal, page 11. And there's where she discussed about the Pennsylvania framework and it's indicated there in that quotation that the criteria is to determine the MPSO is an estimate. And then she goes on to say that the customer eligibility is not a criteria to estimate the MPSO. Is that a statement that you agree with?
It is not.
All right, could you further explain?
Well, 2 points. First, I want to note that while it says that customer eligibility is not a criteria to estimate MPSO, if you were to look at the survey question, that's the foundation of all of the MPSO calculations, the project itself must be eligible. The survey asks about program eligible sales. So that's an eligibility issue to start. That I believe is P1 in the survey questionnaire. And I'm not sure my exhibit number, but it's included. So that's the beginning. It has to be an eligible project to be included. And if there are, there has to be eligible project to be included. That's the first thing. The second point I would make regarding the Pennsylvania framework in this context, it's a great framework. I'm happy that the evaluator is using it in many respects, and I think they followed it very closely most of the way. But in this regard, as was asked earlier, in Pennsylvania, customers are not permitted to opt out. And so the framework, while it doesn't explicitly state it, it's silent on the issue because it's irrelevant. So it's something that is relevant in this state, but it's not relevant in that state of Pennsylvania. So it's not a one-size-fits-all framework.
All right, and I think you, like Ms. Keyworth anticipated where I was going also, but did the rebuttal testimony address or your stated issue about the eligibility of the project itself? Did it address it to your satisfaction, or did it eliminate your?
Are you referring to?
You said there were two reasons. One, that the customers had opted out and therefore were ineligible, but also that the projects were not ineligible. So I read the rebuttal testimony of witness Lee to be about the customer eligibility. And I was asking you, did it also, that her rebuttal testimony address your concern about the eligibility of the project?
I do not believe so. If you could direct me to the page where she discusses that, but
I don't. So I was looking at 11, but as the place where she was addressing. But again, that's on even the question on line 6 says the customers. So I didn't know if the company's response met your 2 reasons or just one.
I believe that this section of the rebuttal testimony only addresses the opt-out concern.
And were you aware of the testimony addressing your other concern?
Yes, I was aware.
I mean, did it in fact address, or you don't know? You can't recall right now.
No, I do not believe it addressed the project eligibility concern. It addresses specifically customer eligibility.
All right, and
to, if I may add, just to reiterate, the criteria that is listed on page 11 is one that it was the project was influenced by the program. But if you were to go back and look at the survey questions, the very first question asks specifically about program eligible sales.
All right. And if you turn to page 12 of that rebuttal testimony, lines 21 to 23 and going over to the next page, is that recommendation there one that you and the public staff agree with? The evaluator recommends in the future that the estimate is proportioned?
Yes, I agree with that.
All right. Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Cameron?
And Mr. Hirons, I did not catch, I tried to write it down, your recommendations on pages 35 and 36. Can you state again which of those recommendations have been fully resolved with DEP? I heard 1, 2, 4, and
1, 2, and 4.
Okay. So number 5 has not been resolved. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And can you respond to Mr. Fields' testimony earlier when he explained why he believes that the opt-out or ineligible benefits should be included in NPSO, and he said that the ineligible projects or the opt-outs provide system benefits without any incentive. And can you provide your response to his claim that Duke has a good story to tell about system benefits without incentives?
Okay, I have 2 or 3 points on that. First, I believe that the methodology used in this report is not consistent with all of the other non-residential program evaluation reports that have been filed. I believe there are other reports which have a qualification question that screens out opt-out customers. So that's one element. I believe that's in Fields Exhibit I of this docket. Regarding specifically what he said today, what witness Fields said today, taking one step back, the reason I noted in my testimony that I believed it was a cross-subsidization was based on the fact that if a revenue is lost based on the program, but it is lost because of participation by an opt-out customer, there's no consequence to that customer, that their rates don't change, the the customers who are paying the rider have to foot that bill. And so that's really as far as I wanted to take that. It was just more of a conceptual discussion about opt-outs and cross-subsidization. As far as how that impacts the cost recovery mechanism, that's not my area of expertise. So I would defer any of those questions to witness.
Boswell, that's okay.
Boswell, not the first name.
The public staff at this point believes that the company does have its opinion. We don't necessarily agree with that opinion, but we believe that the opt-out situation, because the mechanism is currently silent to it, is best handled within the confines of a mechanism review.
And Ms. Boswell, are you able to respond specifically to Mr. Field's statement about the overall system benefits that would be provided, or any response to that?
I am not. I know that they believe that there are overall system benefits. I don't know that the public staff is of the same opinion as far as who should be responsible for paying for it. And so that, again, I think that that's something that needs to be worked out within the confines of the next mechanism review.
Thank you.
And Ms. Boswell, I do believe in response to the question from your counsel, you indicated there was still a calculation you didn't agree with, or something you didn't agree with. Could you explain just as much as you can fully for the record what disagreement remains from the public staff's side?
I will attempt to. It is my understanding that for witness Hurons and witness Williamson, that we don't necessarily agree with the full methodology the company utilized in calculating the percentage, but we can accept the percentage for the purposes of this proceeding.
All right, and would either of them like to explain whether there's significance? Is there significance to why you don't agree with the calculation, or for our purposes in this docket that is just no longer significant?
Recognizing that in this proceeding, the number is not significant one way or the other. I would say that it is still important to get the methodology in alignment with best practices and something that the public staff agrees with, because there could be consequences in future rider proceedings if the methodology allows a lot of non-participant spillover that either is not being calculated correctly or other areas of methodology inconsistency. There could be a consequence further down the road. So it's a moot point from a dollars perspective and a savings perspective in this proceeding, but I still think it's important to get this right going forward.
And so going forward, that's a conversation that the public staff is willing and ready to engage in?
We intend to, yes.
All right. There are no other questions from the commission. Any questions on the commission's questions, Ms. Latoon? Or Ms. Toon?
Just a few brief questions. Witness Irons, you received some commissioner questions on the Pennsylvania framework. I think we probably agree on a few aspects of that, and I'd just like to bring that out. So I think you called the Pennsylvania framework a great framework. So you would agree that it's an industry standard framework. Is that correct?
I would agree with that.
Okay. And so you would also agree that it's based upon the Department of Energy's Uniform Methods Project. Is that correct?
I would agree, subject to review and caveating that it may not be a one-for-one alignment, but the document you cited there did inform many of the chapters of the framework.
Okay. And just last question, I'll be brief. And then utilizing the framework and the surveys conducted pursuant to that framework, isn't it true that the company surveyed North Carolina contractors?
It is true, but I believe there are also South Carolina contractors as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Irons. No further questions.
All right.
Couple questions from the public staff. Thanks. Mr. Hurons, in your review of the 2020 and 2023 evaluation reports for this custom program, were ineligible projects explicitly removed from the analysis by the evaluator?
They were not.
Okay.
Could you restate the question to make sure I understood it?
Yeah, so in your review of the 2020 and 2023
I'm sorry, I thought you said 2022 the first time.
Okay, so in your review of the evaluation reports, and I'm sorry, I said the custom program, I'm referring to the prescriptive program, were ineligible projects explicitly removed from the analysis by the evaluator?
Yes, in both cases.
Okay. And back on the opt-outs topic, customers that are opted out, excuse me. Customers that are opted in have to pay Duke for the lost revenues of the opted out customers. Is that correct?
That is correct to the extent that we're just talking about non-participant spillover. That's really the only relevant time that this comes up.
Okay, and they are also paying the incentive as well, the opted in customers.
The opted in customers are not paying. The opted in customers are participating without an incentive. That is a conclusion of the non-participant spillover methodology, that they're participating without an incentive.
Okay, all right, that's it from public staff. Thank you.
All right. Before this panel is excused, are there motions?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Brown-Bland. The public staff moves that the exhibits attached to the pre-filed direct testimony of witnesses Williamson and Hirons be entered into the record and marked for identification as pre-marked.
All right, they've already been marked as they were pre-marked and identified, and they will now be received into evidence. There being no objections. All right, this panel is excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else to come before the commission by way of evidence?
Nothing from the company.
All right, so I think that brings us to the end, and the last bit of business is the proposed orders, which would typically be due 30 days from the notice of publication of the transcript. Is that good with everybody? All right, so ordered. And there being nothing else to come before us this morning, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Commission.